So, Labour's confirmed that they're continuing austerity. In fact, they're not just maintaining inadequate austerity spending from the previous government, they're actually introducing their own cuts. They're making previous austerity policies even worse. We all knew that there was a black hole in the finances before the election. It was highlighted by the IFS and the OBR, and it feels like Rachel Reeves' shock at what the audit revealed is pure political pantomime. The budget problem is not at all a surprise. That said, some of the specifics are new. There was new information, for example, on the 6.4 billion cost of the Rwanda programme. But the fact that there was a gap was well publicised, and there was discussion in the press of a conspiracy of silence by both the major parties, and that cuts or increases in tax were guaranteed just to continue existing policy. How will Labour deal with this shortfall? So, Rachel Reeves, the new Chancellor, has announced £5.5 billion worth of immediate cuts as a starter. I find this really disappointing. As I've previously discussed, the UK needs a major recovery plan, infrastructure regeneration, restoration of public services. The new government's policy is the opposite direction to this. Some of the thinking here just seems to make no sense economically. First, the new government says that it can save £3.1 billion a year by reducing all government departmental spending. For example, all departments have to reduce their administration budgets by 2%. Now, this assumes that the Conservatives were allowing government departments to run inefficiently. Budgets have been under such pressure for such a long time that this cannot be true. What this means is more pressure on public services. It's pure cuts. Another saving they announced is more than £500 million a year on consulting projects. Now, I think it's a good idea to reduce spending on external consulting contracts. I've talked before about Mariano Mazzucato's excellent book, The Big Con, which highlights how government has become infantilized through the use of external consultants. Bringing the expertise back in-house is a good idea, but that is not what's on offer here. Although it's stopping so-called non-essential spending on consultancy, this implies that a lot of the spending isn't that important. If the projects are ending, what this means is that some important policy issues will be held up. Again, when public services are already under terrible pressure, this just makes things worse. There's an arrogance, I think, in assuming that we can manage things so much better than the Tories. Second, the new government is cutting back on government investment projects. Examples include abolishing the railways programme that was reopening lines and stations as part of the levelling up agenda. More railways is a really good thing, so doing the opposite isn't. Another cutting back is the announcement of a review of the previous government's project to build 40 new hospitals. Now, this doesn't mean it won't necessarily happen, but it is likely to hold it up. We critically need more hospitals, so again, this feels like a really negative development. Cutting investments in things like railways and hospitals, choking off investment even more. This is exactly the opposite of what the country needs. We currently have an investment crisis in the UK that's holding the UK back, and I'm doing a separate video on this. Another set of cuts announced are the winter fuel payments to pensioners. Now, 11.4 million pensioners currently receive this payment, and the cuts will mean that only 1.5 million will remain eligible. Now, of course, many of these pensioners are rich, and they don't need the winter fuel payment to be able to afford their heating. However, the cut-off point to receive the benefit is basically a weekly income of less than £218. For couples, the threshold is £332. So basically, this means that a pensioner with an annual income less than £11,300 will still qualify for the winter fuel payment, but it means that if a pensioner has an annual income of 12,000, say, they'll lose the benefit. £218 a week is a very low cut-off point, so this is a harsh cut for pensioners that are just above the threshold. Age UK estimates that as many as 2 million pensioners badly need this money to stay warm in the winter. At the same time, according to a report by the Intergenerational Foundation, more than 3 million people over the age of 65 live in millionaire households. Now, they currently receive the winter fuel payment, but of course it makes no difference to them. Again, Labour is making a bad choice here. If it taxed wealth, those wealthier pensioners could easily cover the cost of keeping the benefit for those 2 million pensioners highlighted by Age UK. This does not seem very Labour. Again, they're not just maintaining the current inequality we have in the UK, they're actually worsening it for pensioners. So here is what I think happened. This is exactly what Labour planned. They might not have known the exact detail of every number, but they knew that they could present this outrage at the black hole in the finances. In my view, it was all staged managed. It allows Labour to show that it can make tough choices on finances, to show that it can be as austere as the Tories, and they can blame the cuts on the Tories' black hole. Labour is desperately hoping that the economy will somehow magically grow, but making more cuts actually reduces the likelihood of growth even more. In my opinion, nothing is going to create the kind of growth we need to turn the terrible state of the economy around. Labour will have a budget in October, and depending on what happens to growth between now and then, it is likely that they will introduce some tax increases. They've stressed that this won't be on ordinary working people, so we can assume it will be some kind of tax on wealth, probably equalising capital gains tax with income tax, which definitely should be done, by the way. It's absurd that income from financial assets is taxed a lot less than income from employment. But I think that Labour will be cautious. They're indicating that austerity will continue. I think the tax rises in the autumn will be limited and quite strategic. Starmer has really stressed country before party, but austerity is not what the country needs. Labour are putting their party first. Their objective was to get in power rather than putting forward the more radical programme actually required to revive the economy and reduce poverty and inequality. Austerity starves the economy even more when the opposite is required. The Labour Party is making more cuts, more austerity, and this is not going to turn the economy round. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.